So how does a great leader or a leader build effective teams that get the job done?
This podcast is brought to you by Blackaby Ministries International. To find out more, visit blackaby.org.
Well, welcome to the Richard Blackaby Leadership Podcast. My name is Sam Camp, and I'm your host, and I get the pleasure of being joined by Dr. Richard Blackaby yet again.
As always, a delight, Sam.
I'm so happy for this opportunity for you to sit across from me, for you to be in the same room as myself.
Never
and be
gets
blessed
old
by
Sam.
my presence.
I get old, but the experience never gets old.
Well, it's always as if it were the first time. And what you've got, what won't be your first time is speaking at the Cove coming up next year in March. You're going to be speaking on the end times.
The Book of Revelation, which I've never taught on that before.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be, I kind of wanted to pick a topic that I really wanted to study and just get a fresh look and read through a lot of commentaries and just read through the passages. And of course, it's such an intriguing book and a lot of opinions about it. A lot of people that speak very definitively about this is exactly what's going to happen. And
certainly, given this election cycle, it must be. This must be the
there has
end.
to be a beast out there somewhere. And so March 16 to 18 in 2025. And we always encourage folks, any day now, I'm sure by the time this podcast airs, registration will be open. And we always encourage people, the best way to experience the Cove is to stay on site, eat in the cafeteria there. And so, but the housing always seems to fill up. And so then you need to get on a wait list. And so I always encourage folks, you can always cancel if it ends up not working out, but you want to kind of jump in there, make sure you've got great accommodations. And anyone that ever hears about it here on our podcast, always like just to know send us a message. Let me know you're going to be there, and I'll meet you we can visit over some frozen yogurt or something. But I want to at least say hi, shake your hand, just meet you in person, and so if you sign up, then make sure I know you're going to be there. And you can always just come up. I always hang around. If you've ever been there before, I hang around all afterward to talk to anybody that wants to visit with me. So you'll certainly have the opportunity. But I'm very sincere about saying I'd love to meet you if that works out for you to come.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll leave links for that in the show notes for sure. But today we want to dive into the topic of team building, which I think can be a real challenge for some leaders.
Yeah.
That can kind of be a bit of a black box, I think, for some people.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about that. Of course, that's just one of the keys to leadership. It's a great team can always do more than just a great leader, a great individual. Great leaders sometimes can be very talented, very smart, can have a great work ethic, but of course they're limited just to what one human being can do. And the moment you've got a great team, then all of a sudden you've got way more perspectives, way more skill sets, way more experiences and talents, abilities, and there's just something powerful. A team is not just 10 people times 10. There's something powerful about when a certain group of people come together. They accomplish far more than they could as 10 individuals. Yeah. There's just something powerful about a team that works together. And
well, a good team is greater than the sum of each of its members.
Yeah.
There's some exponential component when you have a good team together.
And you see this a lot even in like the Olympics or international competitions where I know when it first kind of started happening, where you could bring professionals over, whether it's basketball, hockey, whatever it might be. The idea was let's just get a whole team full of superstars, like all the top scorers in the league. We'll just get all the best goal scorers there are, best shooters there are in basketball, and we'll just blow away all the opposition. But and there was sort of that mindset originally.
Yeah.
But the problem was, it was like, but we didn't get anybody that's good at defense, that was good at killing penalties, that was good at checking. We just got whoever were the top scorers, and it wasn't a team. It was a bunch of ball hogs all on one team, and then we realize, well, just because you got maybe arguably the most talented people in the whole league, that doesn't make them a team. You've got to have someone that is good at passing the ball as well as shoots the ball. And if all you have is shooters, you're going to be in trouble. Yeah. So what we learned is there is a dynamic of building a well-rounded team and it's always kind of controversial when you leave off some really big scorers, and then you get some guy that doesn't score a lot, but he can check the other team's best player and keep them from scoring, and they can kill penalties and keep the other team from getting goals against you, and it's just good to have some of those kind of players. Yeah. And so how does a great leader or a leader build effective teams that get the job done? And there's a lot to say about that. Of course, we always think about the stories of like David's mighty men, and everyone says, yeah, if I had a bunch of mighty men like David, I could get a lot done too. But the question is, how did he get those mighty men? Saul had soldiers that served under him too, but they're never called mighty men. They're officers, they're people he enlisted, relatives working with him, but they're not called mighty men. How do you attract mighty men? Solomon had all kinds of staff working under him, but they're not necessarily called mighty men either. How do you get a group of people, women and men, that are just highly effective, and they're not only are they talented, but they are motivated to give their very best to you and your organization. And of course, that's the key. How do you do that? And so a couple things that we say in our book, Spiritual Leadership, that we've been unpacking. Chapter 11, we entitled Building Effective Teams. And all those words are important, but the word building means that teams don't just happen, especially effective teams. They're built, and that means you build them by enlisting the right people and not enlisting the wrong people. You're careful about who you put on your team. And I would just say, it doesn't take many wrong people to throw a whole team out of whack, to throw it off balance. All you have to have is one person that just dominates a meeting, that's always negative, that's critical, that rubs the other team members the wrong way, that showboats and wants to be the star, the center of attention, wants the best roles all the time, one doesn't want to share credit, doesn't want to give credit to anybody except themselves. I mean, it doesn't take much. You don't need many people like that until you've just taken the spark out of your team, and you've turned people, and they lose their motivation to do their best work. And so you want to build that team, and you want them to be effective. And the way you measure the effectiveness of a team is, does it get the job done that it's there for? Does it accomplish its purpose? Does it achieve the goals? There are teams that can all have their own individual silos where everybody just does their own thing and protects their turf and protects their budget. But the overall mission of the organization never gets accomplished. And so how do you get a team that just reliably, consistently keeps achieving the goals, accomplishing the mission? Well, that takes building and careful building. So a couple things that leaders will do. One is just they develop a dynamic culture. And culture, you can't overestimate the power of a strong, robust culture for a leadership team. And a culture means there's lots of things related to that, but it's the atmosphere, it's the air that people breathe. If you're in a toxic environment, it's really hard to be motivated to give your best, to share your honest feedback, because you're always in fear of another crisis, another awkward moment, another painful exchange with someone. But how do you create, as a leader, a culture in which your team are enthusiastic, they're motivated to give their very best in creative work? If you could do that, and that of course that's a lot of what a leader does, is create culture, create an environment where people are free to experiment, They're free to try things. They don't live in fear of making a mistake. They're more excited and motivated about what they might accomplish. And one of the big issues with that is, do you hire people from the outside, or do you promote them from the inside? And I don't know if there's a definitive answer to that, but you do realize that every time, if you do build a healthy culture where the team members support each other, they encourage each other, they love each other, then every time you bring in an outsider, you realize, okay, you're taking a bit of a risk here, because this person might have come from a different culture where it was every man for himself, and it was just try to stab someone else in the back before they stab you in the back. And now all of a sudden they're in an environment that's not how your culture operates. So you can do it. You can hire people from the outside, but you better do your homework, and you better, I applied too much to my Buffalo Sabres hockey team, but it was interesting. A couple of years ago, they had some genuine stars on their team, but the culture, the spirit was just pretty negative. People were just kind of checking out and kind of losing hope. And so one of the things the general manager did was to say, listen, if you just don't want to be here, we don't want you here either. If you complain all the time, if you just have that kind of attitude that you're just kind of doing your job, but you don't really care, you've lost heart, then that just poisons the whole team. So one of the things they did is they looked to see, they try to get people who are positive leaders. And so, of course, if you make it to the NHL, you were the star of your city when you were growing up. You were the best player in town, probably. And so so what they did is they said, well, was this person selected to be captain of their Pee-wee team, and when they were younger, were they leading at an early age? When all their peers were wanting to know who should be our leader, did they look to this person because they were an encourager and positive and so on? And they began just to try to enlist players that were leaders, that were encouragers. Interestingly enough, a bunch of those guys ended up being Christians, but what they were trying to say is, it's not just about who's got the most raw talent.
Yeah.
But are we going to get people that will lead, will be positive, can play on a team? There's some people that just can't play on a team. But it's an aside, but I think that's one of the reasons why it's good, I think, for kids when they're growing up to play on an actual team. Like, you could be on a golf team, but you're golfing on your own. Or you could play tennis. You might have a pairs partner, but for the most part, there's certain sports where it's pretty well just you. You do your best, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just need to be on a soccer team, a baseball team, just some kind of team where you can't just be the star, the sole focus. You're one of a bunch of other players, and if you let them down, if you don't do your best, then other people suffer because of, and if you work really hard and play sacrificially, then the other team members can benefit. So when you want to build a culture, you're being very careful about the kind of people you're hiring, and then you are leaning in and investing in the kind of culture you want. So if you want it to be an encouraging culture, you better be encouraging folks. If you want to celebrate success, you better celebrate people's success. If you don't want people to be afraid to try things, then you better not chew them out when they do try something and it doesn't work. And so I think leaders have to just periodically kind of pull up a little bit and say, and so what kind of culture have I created for my team? And then secondly, just I would say leaders maximize diversity. And there's a lot of, I think, wrong thinking on this right now, where it's like, okay, well, if I have a team, I've got to have one person on my team who's Hispanic, and one who's Chinese, and one who's African American, one who's Caucasian, and certain equal number of male and female, and this and that, and we're going to get one of everything. The the danger with that is when you're trying to get people diverse, you're not necessarily just trying to get people with different color skin.
Yeah.
You want people that have different talents, different abilities. That's really the diversity. And so, and different perspectives. And so that's why sometimes, for instance, there have been a number of studies that have shown that teams that have a couple of women on the team typically make fewer mistakes, which is interesting. And of course, in one sense, that's because they see things differently than the men around the table, and they might be a little more cautious sometimes, and they might be a little more relationally oriented, or whatever it might be. But if you have a room, maybe you have a team of 6 people, and they just all happen to be men, then the possibility of them making a good decision is less than if there was a couple of women on that team as well, which is a good thing to know. But but on the other hand, just because you're a woman doesn't, we can't just have a token woman, because you want someone that brings that unique perspective to the table, and it's a strength for them. And so you can have a Chinese person on the team. That's great. They have a certain perspective, but do they have the skills you need to be at that table? Do they have the background? So it's more than just simply we want to have different shades of skin color all around the table. It is we want people with experiences maybe in large organizations and small ones. We want people who've maybe lived overseas or grew up in other countries that come to the table with a whole different perspective. We want people-oriented people. We want brainiacs. We want bold risk takers, and then we want some people that kind of count all the pennies and make sure everything is lining up properly. And so you just want to have as many diverse opinions as possible. And there's lots of studies, and we look at this in our book, but of leaders who basically just gathered people around them that were just like them. It said that's what Richard Nixon did, that all the people on his cabinet were just like him. And so the problem with that is that they couldn't tell him anything that he didn't already know, because he knew what they knew. There's just no point in having 6 or 8, 10 people around a table that all know the exact same thing, who immediately see the things the same way. That's why it is often helpful to have people that have gone to different schools, have had different training, different programs, studied different parts of the country, just so that they've had different things built into them. And so when you sit around the table and you really chew on an issue, that you've got a lot of different perspectives. There's less danger of having a blind spot on a team that has got lots of perspectives. Mm-hmm. And then a third thing, just if you're trying to build a good team, is you just have to love your people, which is again, it seems pretty straightforward, but that's just not easily done. It's not often done, especially sometimes in secular workplaces. What does that look like to love people? You've got people from all walks of life, some of them that perhaps have very different religious beliefs than you or moral beliefs than you, but you want to love on them. And not only do you want to love them, but you want them to know that you love them, that you care about them. And there's just something, again, about, it seems like in the workforce today, in large part, there's a lot of distrust. I mean, right across society. And so even sometimes if you do something nice for your people, they can think, well, what does he want? What's he going to ask us to do? He must be trying to buy us off. And so don't lose heart if by loving them, they still aren't quite buying it, or they don't. When you love them, you're not doing that so that they go along with what you want. You got to love them because you really love them. You really care about them. And so that might mean that you tell a single mom working for you to go home early one day because their kid is sick, or they've just had a crisis in their home, or maybe whatever it might be. You find out that someone's going through a hard time. They've got a son that they just found out is on drugs, and so you find a rehab center, and your company decides to throw some money in to try to help with that. I'll tell you, there's ways where over time, when you just care about your staff and the people working on your team, that there will come a time, the morale just goes up.
Yeah.
When everybody around the table knows that the leader cares about them, and he truly wants what's best for them. And it's not that the leader is trying to use their people. The leader really truly cares about the people, and especially when you're asking hard things of your team, they better know that you care about them, that you're not just going to use them and then discard them, but you're thinking about their best interest as well. And there's great examples of that throughout history, of leaders that just were beloved. Some military leaders that were right there mingling among their people, sharing in the hardships and sacrifices, trying to do everything they could to get the best clothing and food and supplies and medical care for their team, their people. And people realize that, and they come to trust you. And it's just, I've been around a number of teams like this where people truly felt cared for. And if you're cared for, that means the leader is going to listen to you. They're going to listen to your concerns. They're going to be open to your feedback. And it's also going to mean that the leader keeps you in mind when there's something they think would really be helpful for you. And so the leader might come and say, listen, I saw this, there's a conference coming up on this. I know that that's an area you really want to learn more about. Why don't you go to that? We'll pay to get you to that conference and learn some new skills. And or here's a book. Why don't you go buy that book on the company, because I know it really encouraged you. And I've been in lots of different organizations where they had all kinds of resources available, scholarships, opportunities to do various things, to learn new things, bringing in experts. There's been times that I've been brought in just to speak to company staff on things, and they just kind of took a break and said, hey, we brought in this speaker today that I think will just really encourage you. We just want to take an hour or so to just invest in you. A lot of sector companies now or private companies are bringing in chaplains just to be available to their people with all the anxiety and stress going on. Just trying to find ways to say, listen, we really care about our folks and want them healthy, want their families healthy. And then a fourth thing is just leaders maintain focus, because any team is going to be tempted to be distracted. It's going to be tempted to start focusing on secondary matters. And people will have their own hobby horses, and there'll be various opportunities that come along that are really a distraction to the main purpose, the mission of the organization. And ultimately, the leader's got to kind of rein things in and say, hey, guys, this is interesting, but we're really getting off course here. This is maybe for another day. We'll kind of park this idea for now. What we really need to do is chew on this right here. Let's not get too far aside. And ultimately, the leader has to do that. If you've got a bunch of kind of stud team members, they're going to always be looking at new opportunities. You're going to have some entrepreneurial guys always like, this would be great. What about this? And that can be good to a certain extent. You want some entrepreneurial people at the table. But at a certain point, you got to say, but what can we put to bed here? How do we land this plane before we start having liftoff with 3 other planes? Let's get the one down first. And that's what the leader has to do. And a motivated, tightly knit team that is keeping their focus can be a powerful thing. And then maybe just two last things is leaders also foster healthy communication. And Patrick Lencioni has done some great books on that, just how to keep people in the loop, keep them informed. There's just something demoralizing when you're left in the dark and you don't really know where the organization is going. You know there's some high-level meetings going on. You know the CEO's got something on his mind, but he's not told us yet. We just have to speculate around the water cooler instead of just regular communication saying, hey, folks, here's what's going on. Just so you know, here's the update. Or maybe it's just a stand-up meeting at the beginning of the day to say, hey, guys, just want to get you up to speed here as we start the day off. But here's what's going on. Here's where we're going. Here's the problem we're facing. There's been a lot of suggestions that it's hard to over communicate. I think sometimes you can get to the point where you're inundated with memos that aren't, that's nothing that significant you're communicating, but important stuff, as much as you can let people know, immediately it tells you, okay, I'm in. I'm not one of the outsiders. Yeah. They just need my grunt labor, but important stuff as it's coming down. I'm being kept abreast of whatever the leader knows. He's kind of letting me know. And so I feel part of the team. I feel like he trusts me, and if he trusts me, then I want to be trustworthy. And then the last one, and that's I think just a very important one, and that is just that if you want a healthy team, effective team, that you've got to keep helping your people to grow, and that means you've got to give them opportunities. You've got to give them opportunities to lead, opportunities to make decisions. And it might well be that they're not as qualified as the leader is to do some of that work, but you want to have a team. If you just want to do all the work yourself, then don't delegate anything. But if you want people that develop into a team that's effective, and I'll tell you, there's just nothing that warms my heart anymore when I can maybe be gone for a couple of weeks on a trip or be on vacation or something, and come back and just see everything just humming along and seeing, and I, Sam, it's great I'll hear about you and Daniel with the collision or some new thing that we're doing. I didn't even know that was going on. I didn't know we were even looking at that. You probably didn't want to go way over my head with some of the new technology, but I like that. I like that when people on the team are looking at new things and working it out, doing the homework and implementing it, and if the only things that were going on around here is what I came up with, we'd be a much leaner, less effective organization. But how do you do that? Well, you want your people to grow. And of course there's a lot of competition today. There's lots of companies and organizations that are desperate for talented team members. There's always a place for effective leaders to go. So if you want to retain them and have a team that stays together, they've got to be growing together. They've got to be learning together, and feel like they're accomplishing some significant things together. And so, when I used to have annual reviews that we did at the seminary that I led, one of the things I would do with each of the annual reviews was just to say, so in the coming year, what is your growth plan? What is it you want to do to grow? And what are you going to need to do that? And I'd have some people say, I really need to go to this seminar this year. They offer it every year. I think I need to take it this year. Or I'm going to need this book. It's a pretty expensive book, but it's all and everything that I'm trying to do. I just wanted to create kind of a culture that said, I want everybody on my team to be growing in some way, and I want people never to feel embarrassed to say, "Hey, could I go to that? Could I register for this?" They've got just a boatload of people. A bunch of the people I'm trying to emulate are all going to be at this conference, and I could have one-on-one with them, and I just like, hey, let's make it happen. And so, if you really want a team that is just very dynamic, very effective, very unified, then here's some of the steps. There's obviously lots of other things you can do, but I've just seen the difference between a team that is unified, working together, and a team that is disunified, that is bickering, that you see staffs and teams sometime where there's just a huge turnover. I'm aware of a company right now. They're losing all their best people because the leader is just not leading well and not causing people to trust them. People don't get the idea that he cares about them, and they're hemorrhaging good people. And you just can't afford to do that. You won't be around long if you lose all your best people. So something that any leader should be doing is investing some time in saying, how can I keep helping strengthen my team? And there's always something you can be doing. There's always something you can do. And so be just consciously keeping that in mind. What could I do in the next month that would just strengthen and encourage my team? Yeah. And then watch and see what happens as you do that over the course of a year or two.
Yeah, well, that's good stuff, and we'll leave links to your book, Spiritual Leadership, in the show notes. And until next time.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. If this is something you enjoyed, it really makes a difference if you leave a review and a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends. We always love hearing from our listeners, so email us at podcast@blackaby.org.